Forgotten ship could shatter an armada without firing. What else could humanity be hiding in the dark? On board the Coalition's surviving ships, morale was broken beyond repair. Captains who once shouted with pride now sat in silence, their faces pale. Crew members refused to return to battle. Some begged to be allowed to surrender, while others simply stared out the windows, unwilling to even look at the massive shadow still drifting in the distance. To them, the Erebus was no longer a ship. It was a nightmare given form, but on Earth, hope was reborn. In cities across the homeworld, people gathered in streets and homes to watch the transmissions. Families huddled together as the black Supercarrier filled their screens. Children's eyes grew wide with awe. Old veterans who had carried scars from wars long past stood tall again, tears running down their cheeks. "This is who we are," one whispered. "This is who we always were," another answered. For centuries, humanity had been underestimated. Short-lived, fragile, too reckless, too emotional, too small compared to the ancient alien empires. Yet in this moment, the galaxy saw the truth. Humanity was not fragile. Humanity was fire contained in flesh, unyielding and unpredictable. Even in silence, their strength could shake the stars. Inside the Erebus, the crew worked quietly. Their victory was not in missiles or plasma, but in endurance. They had held to their duty for generations, keeping this ship alive for the day it would be needed. And now they had seen what their patience had built. "Transmission from Earth," a young officer reported. Her voice trembled with emotion. They are watching us. The whole planet is watching." The commander closed his eyes and breathed deeply. "Then let them see. Let every child know that humanity stands, that we will always stand." The Erebus transmitted no threats. It did not demand surrender. Instead, it simply broadcast its image across the stars. No words were needed. The galaxy had already understood the message. Humanity does not bow. Alien leaders gathered in secret councils. Some raged, demanding vengeance. Others sat in quiet fear, realizing that the balance of power had shifted in ways they could not control. Civilizations that had once dismissed Earth as a minor species now debated whether peace was the only safe path forward. The legend of the Erebus had grown beyond the battlefield. It had become a story that would live in every heart, whispered from one generation to the next. In the colonies, human settlers who had lost hope now raised their heads high. Farmers on distant worlds, miners beneath alien suns, and engineers aboard space stations all felt the same spark. The sight of the Erebus was more than victory, it was a promise. Humanity would not only survive, humanity would endure, humanity would rise. The Coalition's fleets limped away, defeated without a single shot exchanged. Their banners of pride were torn, their voices silenced by the weight of fear. They had come to teach humans submission. Instead, they had learned submission themselves. And as the Supercarrier drifted above the shining curve of Earth, its engines humming like the heartbeat of an ancient god, the message was carved forever into history. Humanity's answer did not need fire. Humanity's answer was silence. Strength and the unbreakable will to stand the Coalition armada, once proud and unstoppable, was gone. What remained of it limped away in shame, its broken ships scattering into the void like frightened animals. No battle had truly been fought. No firestorm of weapons had filled the skies. The defeat had come not from missiles, but from fear, the kind of fear that stays in memory long after wounds have healed. And at the center of it all stood the Erebus. The black Supercarrier drifted in orbit above Earth, its vast shadow stretching across space. Its engines glowed softly, steady like a guardian's heart. To humanity, it was not just a warship. It was a symbol, a reminder carved in steel and silence that they were not weak, not fragile, and never truly alone. On the surface of Earth, celebrations erupted. Bells rang in cities. Crowds filled the streets. Children lifted their hands to the sky, pointing at the faint silhouette of the giant above them. They cheered, laughed, and shouted the name of the ship, Erebus, the guardian from their forgotten past. Old veterans stood in silence, saluting the sky. Tears rolled down their faces, not from sadness but from pride. For so long, humanity had been treated as lesser, as fragile creatures climbing too high in a galaxy of giants. Now the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity had always been a giant, waiting for the right moment to rise. Inside the command deck of the Erebus, the crew watched the feeds from Earth. They saw faces filled with hope, children smiling, families embracing. Many of them wept quietly, for they knew what this meant. Their sacrifices, their long years of training and guarding had not been wasted. One young officer whispered, "We are no longer forgotten." The commander, standing tall in the center, nodded slowly. His voice was steady, carrying both pride and humility. "We were never forgotten. We only had to remind them." Beyond Earth, in alien capitals across the galaxy, fear spread faster than any fleet. Councils gathered in secret, their voices low, their plans uncertain. They had believed humanity was weak, but now they wondered, if one ship could break an armada without firing, what would happen if more of these giants still existed? The question haunted them. The answer was a nightmare they could not face. And so the galaxy changed. No one dared to threaten Earth again, not openly. The name of the Erebus became a warning whispered from world to world. Do not wake the humans' giants. Do not test their silence. But to humanity, the Erebus was more than a warning. It was hope. It was proof that even when crushed, even when underestimated, they could rise again, stronger than before. In the following days, broadcasts carried the image of the Supercarrier across every human colony. Miners on distant rocks stopped their work to watch. Farmers under alien suns wiped sweat from their brows and raised their heads proudly. Soldiers stationed on lonely outposts straightened their backs. Everywhere, humanity remembered their strength. The Erebus did not fire. It did not kill. It did not boast. And yet it had won. That was the true power of humanity. Not destruction, but defiance. Not fear of death, but the courage to stand tall, even when the galaxy wanted them to kneel. The Coalition had ordered Earth to surrender. Instead, Earth had answered with silence, with the awakening of a legend. As the Erebus turned slowly in orbit, its dark hull reflecting the glow of Earth's sun, a new chapter began for humanity. The galaxy had tried to erase them, but now it would never forget them. The legend was reborn, the giant had awakened, and the humans, once mocked as fragile, now stood as unshakable pillars in the galaxy. The void itself seemed to whisper, "Do not mistake humanity's silence for weakness. Behind it waits the storm." Down their spines. Pilots' hearts raced, their breath shortened, their hands shook. It was as if the Erebus itself was staring into their souls, judging them, reminding them that death was already near. Coalition admirals screamed for order. "Stand your ground!" It is only one ship. But their words cracked like dry leaves. No one listened with full faith anymore. On one destroyer, a young pilot threw down his headset and whispered, I can't stay here." He ran for the escape pod. His fear infected others, and soon more crew members followed. Across the fleet, ships grew disorganized, not from battle, but from the silent grip of terror. Back aboard the Erebus, the human commander stood with calm eyes. He was not young, but his voice was strong. Looking at the chaotic alien fleet, he said softly, "They fear us more than our weapons. That is enough." The Supercarrier advanced one slow step at a time. It did not rush to chase. It did not need to prove itself. Its presence was proof enough. For the first time, the mighty Coalition, who believed themselves rulers of the stars, felt something they had not known for centuries: helplessness. They had come to conquer. Instead, they found themselves facing a nightmare they could not understand, a giant from humanity's past, alive and unbroken. The Erebus had not fired a single shot, and already the enemy was breaking. The void was silent, but inside the minds of the Coalition crews, storms were raging. The Erebus had not fired a single missile, yet its shadow fell over every heart. It was more than a ship. It was a weight pressing against their spirits. Signals pulsed from the Supercarrier, invisible to the eye, but undeniable in their effect. On Coalition ships, lights flickered, consoles went black and then alive again, as if haunted. Alarms screamed without cause. Weapons locked on targets that did not exist. Engines stalled for seconds that felt like eternity. Admirals shouted, "Ignore the interference. It's only tricks." But their voices shook. They too felt it, the crawling fear that burrowed deeper with every passing second. On one cruiser, a gunner dropped his hands from the controls. His eyes were wide and his voice was hollow as he whispered, "It's looking at me." No one argued. Many felt the same, as if the ship itself had a gaze, a will, a soul that peered into them. The truth was terrifying. The Erebus was built to be more than metal and weapons. The humans who designed it had known that battles were not only won with firepower. Wars were decided in hearts and minds, and so they had given the Supercarrier not only cannons and shields but also a weapon that no fleet could resist: fear itself. Inside the Erebus, the human crew worked with calm hands. To them this was not chaos but destiny. Their ancestors had passed down instructions, teaching them that the greatest strength of humanity was not always in guns, but in spirit. Enemy fleet destabilizing, one officer reported, eyes fixed on the screen. 70% of their formation is broken, another said. The commander, gray-haired and steady, only nodded. His voice was calm like a teacher in a storm. Let them break themselves. We do not need to strike. We only need to stand. And so the Erebus stood black and unshaken, drifting through space like a mountain among rivers. Across the coalition, panic spread. Captains barked orders, but crews disobeyed. Some froze at their stations, unable to move. Others abandoned posts entirely, running for escape pods. Fleets that had marched into human space with pride now looked like scattered prey. One admiral, desperate to restore order, commanded his flagship to fire. But when the order was given, the cannons refused. The ship's systems had been hacked by the invisible storm, overridden by the Supercarrier's silent power. His crew stared at him with empty eyes, their will broken. He slammed his fists on the console, but he knew the truth. His fleet was lost before the first shot. On Earth and across the colonies, billions of humans watched in awe as live feeds reached them. Families huddled around screens, seeing the impossible. The ship they had only heard about in old stories was alive, standing against an empire. Children's eyes sparkled with pride. Old veterans wept openly, whispering, "Humanity has not forgotten how to fight." The coalition had thought humans weak, but what they faced now was not weakness, it was endurance. It was the echo of a species that had survived every storm, every predator, every enemy that tried to erase them. The Erebus did not need to shout its message. The silence was enough. Humanity does not bow. The alien fleets began to crumble. Ships broke formation and spun wildly. Entire squadrons fled without orders. Fear was stronger than plasma, faster than light, and still, the Erebus had not fired a single weapon. The shadows in the mind were enough to crush the might of empires. The great coalition armada had once been a wall of steel and fire, united under banners of conquest. Now it looked like a broken mirror, its pieces scattering in every direction. Fear had turned their discipline into chaos. Across the battlefield, ships collided as captains lost control. Destroyers swerved to avoid one another. Cruisers drifted without order, and squadrons that had trained together for decades abandoned their formations. Some vessels fired blindly, not at the enemy but into empty space, as though shooting at shadows would chase away the terror gripping them. On one battleship, the bridge was in turmoil. An admiral shouted for calm, but his crew ignored him. A young officer tore off his headset and screamed, "We can't win. It's not a ship, it's death itself." His words spread like poison. Others began running, some toward escape pods, some simply collapsing where they stood. The admiral slammed his fists on the command chair, his voice breaking. "Hold the line. It's only human trickery." But in his heart, he no longer believed his own words. The Erebus moved slowly forward, engines glowing like embers of an old fire. It did not speed. It did not hunt. It simply advanced, steady and unyielding like a mountain sliding across the stars, and everywhere its shadow reached, courage withered. Inside the Supercarrier, the human crew stood in silence, watching the collapse. They had trained for war, prepared to unleash weapons that could shatter moons, but now they realized those weapons were not needed. Their ship itself was a weapon, its presence, its history, its legend was enough. A young technician whispered almost in awe, "We're not even fighting." The commander placed a hand on the console and answered softly, "Sometimes the greatest victory comes without firing a single shot." On the alien ships, panic spread like wildfire. Entire crews begged their captains to flee. Some captains resisted, but when their crews refused to obey, they were powerless. Mutinies erupted silently, without gunfire, just refusal. No one wanted to die facing the silent human giant. A coalition dreadnought tried to charge, its cannons glowing bright, but its systems flickered. Sabotaged by the invisible storm, the Erebus spread across the void. Its weapons failed, its engines stuttered. and in seconds the mighty ship drifted helplessly, turning in circles like a child's toy. Nearby ships panicked at the sight, believing the dreadnought had been cursed. They turned away in fear. From Earth to the colonies, billions of humans watched the unfolding scene. Some covered their mouths in disbelief. Others raised their fists in triumph. The galaxy had called them fragile, weak, unworthy of the stars. But here, before every watching eye, the truth was revealed. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was dangerous in ways no empire could predict. On alien worlds far away, broadcasts of the battle spread. Civilians of other species watched the Great Coalition fail without even being fired upon. Whispers rose in alien markets and homes. If one ship could do this, what would happen if more were awakened? Fear spread beyond the battlefield, planting itself in the hearts of whole civilizations. The Coalition's pride cracked, just as its armada did. Ships fled in every direction, ignoring orders. Admirals screamed through broken channels, trying to unite what could no longer be united. The fear was too deep. The cracks had become fractures, and the fractures had become collapse. The Erebus slowed, almost merciful. It did not chase the fleeing ships. It did not boast or roar. It only stood silent and watching, like a judge over a failed trial. The human commander looked upon the battlefield of chaos and whispered words only his crew could hear. They came to erase us. But it is they who are being erased. And so, the mighty coalition with hundreds of ships found itself broken not by fire, but by the invisible weight of fear. Their armada was no longer a storm. It was dust, scattered on the wind. And still, the Erebus had not fired a single shot. The battlefield that had once belonged to the mighty coalition now drifted in silence. Wreckage floated aimlessly. Whole fleets that had marched into human space with confidence now fled like scattered birds. The Erebus stood alone, calm and unshaken, its vast hull glimmering faintly against the stars. Across the galaxy, the news traveled faster than light. From the outer colonies to the farthest alien markets, whispers became shouts. The humans have awakened a giant. Civilizations that once mocked Earth now trembled at the thought. The galaxy was full of stars, empires, and fleets that shone with pride. To most alien races, humanity was a small story, nearly forgotten in the flow of time. They remembered only fragments of old wars, whispers of human courage, and the strange fire that once burned in the hearts of Earth's people. For centuries, humans had lived quietly, far from the great conflicts. They built farms on new worlds, cities under alien suns, and raised children who never knew the sound of war drums. But silence does not mean weakness. Silence can hide something greater. Deep under the icy shadows of Jupiter, hidden for ages, there was a secret so old that even humans had begun to forget. Buried in frozen rock, locked in massive hangars, slept a ship unlike any other. It was not a simple warship. It was a supercarrier, a moving fortress the size of a continent, built in the darkest days of humanity's struggle for survival. Long ago, when humanity was young in the stars, enemies had come to erase them. In desperation, humans built giants, ships that carried fleets within them, weapons that could shatter moons, and engines that could burn through space like a rising star. But when peace finally came, those giants were too dangerous to remain. One by one, they were shut down, buried, or dismantled. Yet one survived, the greatest of them all, the one they named Erebus. For generations, Erebus lay in silence. Dust settled on its black hull. Systems powered down, waiting for voices that never came. It became more myth than memory. A ghost ship sealed away, waiting for a day no one wanted to return. That day had come. The Galactic Coalition, a mighty alliance of alien powers, turned its eyes toward Earth. They had grown arrogant, believing themselves rulers of the stars. With fleets in the hundreds, they marched into human space. They demanded surrender. They called humans fragile, temporary, weak compared to the long-lived races that ruled the galaxy. Colonies were attacked. Defenseless ships were burned. Whole families begged for mercy, but mercy never came. The coalition believed Earth would bow just as others had before. To them, humanity was too small to resist. Their leaders laughed as they planned to divide human space among themselves. In their eyes, it was already finished. But beneath Jupiter's ice, voices awoke. Old doors opened, metal groaned, and engines older than most civilizations roared to life once more. The Erebus, the forgotten giant, opened its dark eyes. Systems long silent began to sing again. Generators lit the void with a cold glow. Ancient crew stations once covered in frost warmed under human hands. A handful of men and women, descendants of those who had sworn to guard the ship, stood in awe. Tears filled their eyes as the control panels lit up, as the voice of the Supercarrier echoed once again. Power restored. Engines responding. Primary shields online. It was like listening to the heartbeat of a god returning to life. The galaxy thought humanity's age of giants had ended. They thought Earth had forgotten how to fight. But as Erebus broke free from its icy tomb and drifted into the stars, the truth became clear. Humanity had never been weak. They had only been waiting. The stars trembled as the Supercarrier emerged, black and endless, larger than any living fleet. To the invaders, it was an impossible sight, like seeing a mountain rise from nothing, a legend alive again. The silence of centuries was broken. The forgotten giant had awakened, and soon the galaxy would remember why humans were never meant to be underestimated. The invasion fleet of the Galactic Coalition moved like a dark tide across the stars. Hundreds of warships, each forged by alien empires, sailed with confidence. Their hulls gleamed with banners of conquest, their cannons hungry for fire. In their command halls, admirals laughed at the thought of resistance. Humanity, they believed, had no power left to fight. They called humans the fragile ones, short-lived and unimportant. To them, Earth was a prize, not a threat. The Coalition spoke openly in arrogance. Their bones will be dust, their worlds will be ours. They believed the conquest would be quick, easy, almost without meaning. But something was changing. Deep inside their fleets, whispers began to spread. Small crews reported strange signals, echoes on the sensors like shadows moving where no ship should be. Some dismissed it as machine error, others grew uneasy. They had seen the reports. Something massive had stirred near Jupiter's orbit. Something old, something terrifying. At first, the admirals mocked the idea. A relic? They sneered. A human toy left to rot? One ship cannot face an armada. Yet the whispers grew, carried from bridge to bridge until unease gnawed at even the proudest captains. And then, they saw it. Out of the frozen dark, the Erebus emerged. The alien fleets watched their screens as the ship revealed itself. Mile after mile of black metal stretched across the void, its size greater than anything they had ever known. It was so vast it made battleships look like insects. Its engines glowed like ancient stars, slow and steady as if it did not need to rush. This was no ordinary warship. This was something built in desperation, forged when humans had stood against extinction itself. A supercarrier designed not to fight a battle but to decide the future of species. Its surface was armored with layers of metal older than most alien civilizations. Its form carried scars from wars forgotten by history, and yet it lived. On board, the human crew stood in awe. Generations of their families had trained for this moment, sworn to keep the ship alive should the galaxy ever threaten Earth again. Now their vows had meaning. One officer whispered, voice trembling, "She wakes." Another placed a hand on the console and said, "The galaxy thinks we are weak. Let them see what we built in the fire of survival." The Erebus did not rush forward. It did not unleash weapons. It simply drifted into position, like a predator choosing its ground. To the Coalition, it was a nightmare. A relic should have been powerless, broken, nothing but rust. Instead, the ship radiated strength. Its presence alone made fleets hesitate. Some captains tried to steady their crews. "It is only one ship," they shouted. "We are hundreds." But their words felt hollow. The crews could see with their own eyes. The Erebus was not like anything they had ever faced. The admirals barked orders to prepare for battle, but in their hearts they felt a cold weight. They remembered the old stories, the ones they had mocked. Tales of humanity building weapons so terrible that even victors feared them. The galaxy had laughed at those stories. Now, staring at the supercarrier, no one was laughing. From Earth, people watched through hidden satellites. Across human colonies, billions saw the black shape moving in silence. Hearts that had been broken by invasion began to beat with hope. Old men whispered, "It returns." Children pointed at the sky, asking, "Is that ours?" For the first time in generations, humanity felt the fire of pride. The Coalition had come expecting weakness. Instead, they found a gathering storm. The Erebus loomed before them, patient, fearless, waiting. It did not need to fire a single shot to make the galaxy understand. Humanity had not been defeated. Humanity had only been waiting for the right time to rise, and that time had come. The Erebus drifted forward into the starlit void, silent and unstoppable. It did not rush. It did not threaten. It simply existed, and its existence alone was enough to shake the hearts of all who looked upon it. On the bridges of Coalition warships, alien commanders leaned over their consoles, eyes wide with disbelief. The screens could not hide the truth. This was no ordinary ship. This was something beyond their imagination, too large, too dark, too deliberate. It felt less like a vessel and more like a moving planet of war. Fear was a strange thing. It started small with whispers. A helmsman muttering, "It's bigger than anything I've ever seen." A gunner's hands trembling as he tried to aim at the target. But fear spread like fire. Soon whole crews were glancing nervously at one another. Orders were given, but the voices of the admirals no longer carried the same weight. Inside the Erebus, the human crew stood ready. Their numbers were few, but their spirit was iron. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the descendants of guardians, men and women who had lived their whole lives beneath Jupiter's ice, preparing for a day they had never been certain would come. Generations had passed down the duty: keep the ship alive. Keep it ready. One day it will be needed. Now that day had come. The command deck was alive with energy. Screens glowed as ancient systems reawakened. Voices called out with steady determination. Engines holding at 80%. Shields restored and stable. Hangar bays sealed. No launch required. Then came the words that surprised everyone. Weapon bays offline. The weapons, missiles that could crack fleets, cannons that could melt cities, remained silent. The Erebus did not open fire. It did not need to. Something else was happening. Invisible waves spread out from the Supercarrier, rolling across the void like a storm no eye could see. They were signals, frequencies crafted long ago by human minds who understood not only machines but also fear itself. These signals wormed their way into enemy ships, twisting systems, bending codes. Coalition targeting computers flickered. Shields pulsed with static, and communication lines became filled with strange whispers. But it was not just machines that suffered. The signals were designed to touch minds as well. Alien captains felt cold sweats run,